All right, hello, welcome to Tabletop CP, and today we're doing a live stream. We're talking to Bo Mortensen from about bolt action competitive. So Bo has a YouTube channel. He gives advice on how to play competitive bolt action. He critiques lists, stuff like that. So he's knows a lot about competitive bolt action. It's something I've been interested in. I've never really dove deep into it myself. Kind of just dabbled in it, but I was hoping to get some insight from Bo. I would like to try it out. I know we've been getting some requests to have some more competitive type list on the channel. Most of our lists are just pretty basic, mostly historical type lists, but I think having some kick-ass competitive lists on the channel could be pretty fun. I know Andre's a big competitive guy, so he's all about that. So I could get into it. So we're going to talk to Bo about that. So let's bring in Bo right now. Hey, Bo.
Hello, everyone.
Thanks for joining.
You're welcome.
Let me turn it up a little bit here.
Yep.
All right. So what's going on?
Well, right now I'm on summer vacation, which means I'm on vacation for bolt action as well. I have played like one game in a month, which is like my longest hiatus from bolt action, I think, for years. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
So what kind of what armies do you have?
Well, I own a large British army, which is my main army. Casper just commented in the stream. He's one of the guys I know. I own a large British army, my main army for tournaments, and right now I'm building a partisan army as well. And then I have a what if Czechoslovakian army as well. Like, what if the Sudetenland crisis had turned into a real war? I have a Czechoslovakian army for that. So that I have 3 armies. That's it. I know a lot of people have a lot of armies, but not me.
Yeah, I got quite a few. I think I have 4 German armies alone. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of different varieties: early war, late war, winter, SS. I mean, there's tons of just German armies. So
yeah. But since
yeah,
we're talking about competitive bolt action, I actually have a point with that. I'm very early on. I figured out what like sort of play style I like, and I simply focused on that. And all my minis for bolt action is bought for that. All my hobby stuff is something else. I like saga and other stuff than bolt action. So yeah.
So bolt action is pretty much strictly competitive for you.
Yeah, for me, yes. Although it is turning into a little bit more with time, but it started out as a competitive thing, and that is still the only game I play right now competitively. So yeah.
And the good thing about bolt action though is you could totally take the army built for competitive and make it historical. Not
You
so
could.
much vice versa. I
Ah,
don't think, just from my
yeah,
experiences.
yeah,
I mean, we'll get into the questions here in a second, but one thing I've noticed about competitive play and lists in specific is there's a lot of repetition in there. So like you might need 2 or 3 Stuarts,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I pretty much don't have. I have one of everything is pretty
yeah.
much what I have, except I have a bunch of Shermans, but otherwise I don't have a bunch of
Mm.
repeated units. So, but
Yeah,
that's
and yeah, and we can talk a little bit about why that is. I think that's one of the big differences between competition play and casual play. Yeah.
yeah. So let's. So we got a few people in here from the chat. Who we got
Yep.
here? We got Casper. This is your buddy Casper.
Yeah.
He says Bo is just lucky. Okay, well, as one of our favorite sayings here is, it's better to be lucky than good.
Yep. Yep.
We got Dr. Silky from New York. Who else we got here? Dad and Dom.
Yep.
These guys are pretty cool. They're the ones who sent me that nice custom tabletop CP dice bag, which is super awesome. So anyway, yeah, let's
Right.
so let's dive into it here. So
Yep.
I had sent Bo some questions just to give him some stuff to think about, so we're not ambushing him with anything. And it's just questions I come up with that I had personally for competitive play. So the first one is, what do you consider competitive bolt action? How is it different from non-competitive bolt action?
Mm. For me, it's not that different. I mean, uh, it's the same game. right? It's the same rules. You're doing the same thing. Um, but it does have aspects of how it's expressed that are different from regular bold action, and I think it's because a lot of the focus turns onto the tournaments, whereas a lot of casual play is for hanging out with a few friends in the basement, drinking a few beers, having a laugh. But tournament play or tournament competitive bold action is for tournaments, right? Is you go to a tournament, you prep for the tournament, you train. I train for going to tournaments. I and one of the things that really separates is the list building as a form of expression of that competitiveness. Whereas I think a lot of people who play non-competitive bold action don't think about their list so much. They look at what they have in the collection, like you said before. With your collection, you have one of everything. Um, they look at what they have in their collection and feel like, well, I want to field my panther today, and then they put in a panther in their list. We start the other way around. We look at what it is that we want our army to do in the game, and then we start building the list from that, and then we start buying the models for it. That's how I got my British Army. I was like, I checked out a few things first, what I liked of play style, which models I liked, which units I liked, and then I got back to what I wanted to buy, and then I bought the army, right? Um,
Okay.
so
So
so I
that's
think,
interesting. So
yeah.
you plan it out first. You write the list and then you start buying stuff.
First,
Okay.
yes, I know a lot of competitive players do plan out first what it is they want. I try to do the same with the army I'm building right now with my partisan army, and I sort of got halfway there, but not all the way there. And that's one of the things I'm struggling with right now, like how to make this partisan army work, and I'm not sure how to do that yet. So,
Yeah,
um,
I'm working on a partisan. Well, I have a box. I'm ready to start doing a partisan army, but that
War Games
honestly,
Atlantics, or what are you?
it was from the 0200 hours,
Okay. Oh,
but I
yeah,
believe
they are really nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a box of those, and I haven't looked at it yet, but I was thinking, I want something different.
Yeah.
Partisans, and I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I did not think partisans would be competitive at all. Just looking
Nope.
at them and their list, they don't have a lot of options, but
They have very few, but they do have some very strong infantry choices and a lot of access to. I mean, they can get a bazooka, they can get snipers. So the teams and some of the infantry choices can be really competitive, but
okay, that sounds
but you're not
cool.
going very historical at all. So
No, well, I'll have to make sure
um,
to hit you up when I start getting on this
yeah, yeah.
partisan
I mean, what
list.
I'm building right now, I bought like 2 boxes of War Games Atlantics, and I'm building like 60 guys with pistols.
Oh wow, okay,
so,
that's right,
so
competitive
not very
choice.
historical, but that's the competitive choice. Yeah, yeah. So,
So, what do you think is the allure of competitive bolt action? What draws people to it?
um, for me, I like many people. I came from other games. I played 40K. I've played Infinity, the game. I played X-Wing as well. And I sort of dipped my toes into the tournament scene in each one of these games. And I really enjoy the going to tournaments. I enjoy the trying to win aspect. It's like a mental exercise. And I've always enjoyed gaming, board games and stuff where you try to win. So for me, there's a sort of connection to that childhood experience of playing board games to win them, playing chess, Stratego or whatever, like these board games, um, and I think that there's a lot of players who feel the same way, that it becomes a mental exercise where you're facing off against this certain opponent, and I have immense respect for the guys I'm trying to beat, but I am trying to beat them, and I want them to bring their best because I want to be the best. So it's for me, it's this trying to become better and to be the best. I have to make a confession, and that is that I started out bold action with the thought that I want to be the world champion at this. I haven't gotten there yet, but I've gone to like 3 of the WTCs right now, and I'm in the top 5 every time. So I must be doing something right. But I haven't become the best yet.
I
Um,
think you'll get there.
maybe I'm hoping. I'm definitely
I'll,
working on it.
I'll be rooting for you.
Thank
So,
you.
what do you
Yeah,
why do you think competitive bolt action gets a bad rap? I mean, it's not looked at positively by a lot of bolt action players, probably a majority, I would say.
yeah,
I don't know that for sure, but just in
yeah.
the
There
bolt
there
action
is a there
circles
is
I
at
run
least
in.
I agree there and and there has been pushback as well against me, and um, a lot of it was in the early days. I don't get as much anymore, but um, I think and I've spoken about this on my channel many times. I think there's a mismatch of expectations. Um, so you have the competitive players who want to face off against an opponent who also tries to win. That's what we want, right? That's our enjoyment of the game. But then you have casual players who just want to immerse themselves in the story that we're because most of the games are actually a little story about a little conflict happening, right? Or you have the historical players who want to immerse themselves in the historical aspects, in recreating the sense, the feeling of a certain place and a certain time. So I think there's sometimes a mismatch of expectations for the game, which I think can be where the competitive players can get a really bad reputation because they're trying to win, and some of the other players are not actively trying to win; they're trying to have fun in other ways. Um, so I think one of the most important things to do is to match your expectations before a game and before an event. I really think that people who set up events, and I do TO events for Bold Action as well, need to be very clear in their language for what it is that you expect people to do at the event. And so that's like one thing I think that mismatch of expectations. But I also think that there's a lot of um, hmm, bad behavior that people remember from earlier games. Maybe a lot of us come from 40k, and a lot of the people who dislike competitive players come from 40k and remember like the whacker players, the win at all cost players who would do
Right.
anything to win a game of 40k, including like putting that figure like a half an inch closer to the objective, whatever, when the opponent wasn't looking, like cheating. And that happens very rarely in bold action, in my experience. And I've been to a lot of very competitive tournaments, but there is that memory of, and sometimes people, when you are at a table and you have that mismatch of expectations, one player can feel like the other players is that kind of person again.
Right.
So I think a
Yeah,
lot of it comes from that.
I remember it's just been fairly recently that I've noticed that a lot of the events and stuff that I see advertised there, they're very clear about what it is. This is a competitive tournament. This is more of a historical. It
Mm,
didn't used to be like that years ago. It was just
no,
there's an event, and then you would just
yeah,
have everyone showing up, and that's when
yeah,
you get these mismatches you're talking about.
yeah,
You got the competitive guy going up against the guy
mm,
who's got a historical list with like 3 medium
yeah,
machine guns in it. This is
mm,
how the platoon was set up, so this is what I'm
yeah,
bringing, and he's going
yeah,
against the guy with the super competitive list. And yeah, that
yeah,
that right there could lead to some
yeah,
bad feelings about competitive players if you're going
exactly.
into it with
Yeah,
your historical list and you're running up against a guy who's got this ultra
mm,
competitive list that he's played 50 times. Yeah, I can see there being a problem with that.
yeah.
So I mean,
And
it's
and Jack just noted in the comments that he thinks that the games workshop games that the tournament scene was pretty toxic, and I think you do develop sort of um, a culture in the tournament scene, and the culture in I can say from personal experience, the culture in bold action is really nice. People are really nice,
yeah,
and I do try to encourage that, even though I try to be very competitive.
yeah,
I mean, being nice when you're beating someone is even better than I mean, just beating them, right? It just leave people with a good sense of you as a person. You don't have to be a jerk when you when you're
right,
winning games.
exactly. And that's
Yeah,
the Games Workshop. Yeah, I agree. I started with Games Workshop. Most
yeah,
people I know did as well, and
yeah, yeah,
I have bad memories of
yeah,
40K myself. Even
yeah,
though I'm tempted to try it again, I always every time they come out with a new edition, it's like,
mm,
well, maybe I
yeah,
should give them another try. But I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
So
And I think one of the reactions, one of the things that has sometimes been creating a little bit of bad blood in the bold action community, is that when people experience that mismatch, especially if they're the casual players, that those, because maybe I'm in one of the camps, right? That's just how I view it. People can yell at me in the comments for this. I experience casual players and historical players being more gatekeepy, if that if that's a word,
yeah,
about the game, that they sort of like, this is not the way you're playing it. You have to play it this way. And I'm sorry for all of those people who feel like that. I don't believe it's true. I believe that you can play and enjoy the game in many different ways, and I think all of them are equally valid, including mine. um, and I've talked to people at Warlord Games about this also, on my channel, and they're all like, well, Bold Action, we didn't decide that this was a competitive game. We didn't decide that it was a casual game. We didn't decide it was a historical game. We just put out a game and hope somebody bought it. So they are not like, they are not, definitely not gatekeeping, but
no,
maybe
they're
somebody
not.
I'm not sure if anyone should be, actually. So for me, Bold Action can be all of those things at the same time, as long
Oh
as
yeah,
you
certainly
match
it
the
can.
expectations. Yeah,
Everyone can live peacefully together in bolt action. Historical gaming in general is a
yeah,
lot different than Games Workshop.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so what about how big is this? Is the competitive scene? You think it's grown or?
Well, um, I did some notes for this because um, how I see it, it's been expanding at least over the last 4 to 5, maybe even 6 years. It's been the competitive scene for bold action has been expanding, um, and I think it really picked up pace once the WTC was announced, and that turned into a success. Yes, I know there's been lots of different issues with the WTC, and sometimes that gets bad rep as well. Having gone to all of them, I can only say I enjoyed them immensely. But now what I'm seeing is, and maybe that's also because I got into YouTubing for competitive bold action. There are bold action tournaments on all major continents right now, that I hear about. They're popping up everywhere. The bold action scene in my local meta, we have 3 to 4 times as many tournaments right now than what we did like 6 to 7 years ago. So a lot more tournaments, a lot more events, and that is because the competitive players have picked up the game more. Um, so a lot of, and there's a lot of nationals popping up as well, like national tournaments where you can become the national champion of something. I think um, a lot of those have to organize because the communities have to organize like a national, right? It's something that can be a little bit difficult to get everyone to accept that this is the national tournament for a certain
So what
country.
is
Yeah.
WTC?
The WTC is the World Team Championships that was organized by a private organization called IGE, International Gaming Events, and they had run a team tournament for Middle Earth first, and then they decided to bring in Bold Action as well, and we went to the first event for that in Poland, and it was brilliant. And we met, and the thing that was extra brilliant, like one thing was we got to feed our competitive uh, desires, but at the same time we met a lot of other people from around the world. So and that was immensely cool. People I still contact. I have friends in other countries now, and some of them don't even we don't even share a common language, which is quite amazing. So yeah, the WTC is right now the premier international event.
Is that something you have
Other
to qualify for, or is that are
Well,
there
it depends
qualifying tournaments?
on your local national organization level. for Denmark, we just held our qualifier a month back, and I qualified. Yay! Um,
Congrats.
but we are at a point where at least we want to qualify the people for the top team. But some countries are just in the process of organizing themselves, um, and there is an element of finance here because it can be expensive. It's expensive, right? All the WTCs so far have been held in Europe, which means that people in the States, they have to travel to Europe. That can be expensive. Um, People from Africa, South Africa, I know have a very active scene as well. They're trying to come to some of the European tournaments, but it turns expensive. And I know also the Australian scene is pretty active as well in bold action, but again, expenses are pretty high. So it one of the things, one of the issues with making this a truly international competitive scene is that there is a lot of money that you need to pay out in order to go to these
Yeah, it sounds
events.
like it.
Yeah,
Got to drive. You got to fly to Europe and get a
yeah,
hotel and all that
yeah,
entails. And
yeah. And
yeah,
of course, a lot of the American players who went last year, they made a whole holiday of it. They invited the families, which we got to meet. Some of them I had met online before, but we got to meet some of their family as well when they came over, and they made a holiday of it in Spain, which was the place where it was hosted last
Hmm.
time, and it was brilliant. It was really cool, but it does turn very expensive, doesn't it? So um, yeah, and there's also like a Facebook group for competitive play called Bold Action Competitive. Right now, I think it has 1,300 members. So not definitely not all the people going to tournaments. A lot of people who are not going to tournaments are sorry. A lot of people who go to tournaments are not maybe members of this Facebook group. But I can also see it just on my own channel that it's growing. That a year ago I had like a few hundred subscribers. Now I have more than 1,000, and it's still expanding. Um, so and you can see the same for the other premier competitive podcast with the Juggernaut podcasts. They are also they have quite a high rate of people downloading their podcasts. So it is growing, I think. Yeah.
yeah, I enjoy. I enjoy listening to that podcast when I'm driving around sometimes.
Although you need to not listen to it loudly because it's not safe for work.
No,
Let's
no,
say it like
it
that.
is definitely not
Yeah.
safe for work, but that's what makes it funny. So,
Mm,
um,
yeah.
let me just take a look through the comments real quick.
Mm,
So, we got our buddy Gordon John Smith. He's very active in
yes.
the promotion of bolt action, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Gets the word out there. He's very passionate about it.
Mm. I
Yeah.
the last game I played was against Gordon on Tabletop Simulator. A video coming out on my channel about that game in a few days.
So, oh yeah,
Yeah.
how do you guys like that? You like the tabletop simulator?
Tabletop simulator can be worked on, and you can play games on it. It's a little bit chunky, especially because you're moving units instead of individual figures. The place where I've seen it done before was with Infinity, the game, but with Infinity, you're moving individual models. So each model is what you need to move, but here you need to. It's a little bit finicky, but I think with a little bit practice and a little bit of patience, you can play games, and I certainly intend to. I have dates going on with some of the top competitive American players as well.
It's definitely a
Yeah,
good way to get some games in. I
yeah,
mean, it's
it
you don't have
is.
to
It
set up,
is.
you don't have to break down. It's just
Yeah,
turn it on. There you go. It's just
yeah,
learning the clunkiness of it. Really is that's the
yeah,
hard part. I played some Chain of Command on it before, and it was once I got it down, it was pretty good. But yeah,
yeah,
it took a little bit of
yeah,
learning. So let's see
yeah.
here. So let's move on down our questions here. So what So let's get into more specifics about
Mm,
competitive bolt action. What
yeah.
makes a unit or army competitive?
Oh, I have a lot to say on this topic. Do you have like a few hours?
We got all the time
Um,
you need.
um, if we're talking about an army, what makes an army competitive? That's really a synergy of the national special rules, the selection of units that you have. It needs to be broad enough, and it needs to fit their national special rules. and what type of army builds you can build with those selections. So national special rules plus army selections. What builds can you get? And at the same time, there's a consideration of points for value. So you're paying points for something that adds a certain combat value to your build, and a lot of our evaluation of certain nations comes down to this, like, sort of, it's a little bit of mathy view analysis of armies, of what you can do. um, and for that, we clearly see that the Soviets, the Brits, are the top nations right now. Unfortunately for all the German players, sorry, I have a whole segment on my channel where every time I borrowed sort of a slogan from American politics, calling it "Make Germany Great Again," um, because Germany is just not doing well, right? So and I think that's down to what I've just talked about, the synergy of national special rules, points for value, unit selection, and builds that you can make with it. Germany is lagging a little behind, which is a pity. But and so I would say, like, the Brits and the Soviets are the best right now. Americans very close behind those, um, depending on how the meta moves, and that's of course something that we also can talk about, what meta is and such. If we're talking about units though, um, what I look for is I look for units that are not overcosted for what they deliver. Um, and that typically means that you need a lot of dice or range or like something where you can say, right, this is fairly cheap for the combat power that I'm getting. I know Warlord Games tried to make like a math for how to calculate points, and every unit is the points value is calculated using that math. It just doesn't really translate into the game on the tabletop. um yeah. So yeah, so there's a lot of min-maxing going on when you look at units, about, like, how can I get as much power into my army for as few points as possible.
So
That's
the
yeah,
Soviets are kind of, I mean, they have a ton of, I mean, just looking through their book, it's an amazing
yeah,
amount of
yeah,
variety.
yeah.
But then their special rules. So you think I'm trying to think, Soviet special rules. I mean,
They get a free unit, which makes
oh, that's
them
right,
extra good at
the
low
free
points,
unit.
and then they have a very good selection of units. They have a lot of different units with a lot of capabilities, and some of the best units in certain aspects of the game are Soviets. Anti-tank units, for instance, the Soviet dogs mines are completely undercosted and completely overpowered. Um, yeah, and you can pick three, which which just makes it a no-brainer. I would expect all real competitive Soviet armies to have three dog mines in their list, and yeah, and that's just yeah, that's just one thing that you're gonna have to expect if you're going competitive with that. Yeah.
So is
Um,
a Goliath, like this, the German Goliath, as an example, not
yeah.
competitive, right?
Definitely not. Completely
Okay.
overcosted. Yeah. And underperforms. Yes, you can hit something with it if you really, but it's so difficult to actually get to connect with the enemy, and so easy to counter. Um, that is not worth the points. The same can be said for the balance between like two premier anti-tank weapons, the American bazooka and the German Panzerschreck, which was actually modeled on an American bazooka. They made it like from retrofitted bazookas, and the Panzerschreck is 60 points, the or 70 points, 80 points, can't remember. It's more expensive than the American bazooka, which I think is 60 points. Can't remember right now. Someone in the comments would tell us basically, but I mean, why? They have the same range. Yes, the Panzerschreck has like +1 in penetration. Not that much worth it if you're never going to see heavy tanks, which you're not seeing in competitive bolt action at all. We rarely see anything heavier than a 9 plus, and that is rare as well. So yeah,
So the ability to bring multiple things, as we talked about at the beginning,
redundancy is clearly a thing. Yeah.
And that's, I think the Soviets, don't they have that baked into their reinforced platoon right off the
Yeah.
bat? They can bring 3 AT things.
Yes. And because they have extra men, like their free unit, a lot of Soviet platoons you'll see being filled out with inexpensive infantry, inexperienced militias or Strafbat units, like very inexpensive. So they're hoarding out what I call a hoard build, where you have like more than 50 infantry models on the table.
That's a lot. Yeah, that's a
That
lot
is
for
a
a game
lot,
of bolt action.
and you can see some horde builds where it becomes more than 90 models for 1,000 points, which is insane. But what you're basically playing on there is you're trying to have so many bodies that the enemy can't actually kill all your models, um, which is a valid tactic, I guess, but it does mean you'll have to paint a lot of infantry models.
Well, plus if you have a giant unit, I mean, in order to
They
take that
will,
morale check, you're going to
yeah,
have to kill
yep,
a lot of them, which
a lot of them, yeah,
is easier when they're inexperienced and you're killing on a three
yeah,
plus. But
yeah,
I mean, then the Japanese with the bonsai rule, I would, in my head, I think, okay,
yeah.
competitive Japanese. I was a little bit surprised not to hear them in your top list of
Right now we're not
armies.
seeing it. I maybe they're a fourth. Um, I'm not sure, but we're not seeing them do well in top tournaments right now. The Japanese, they're simply not winning tournaments. I've actually seen more German players win tournaments than I've seen Japanese players right now for the
Hmm.
last year and a half, which is weird because like rating the national special rules, I would think that the Japanese have better army builds, but um, we're not seeing it. And the Japanese have some of the army builds that people have really complained about, like this is broken, overpowered. Um, the bamboo horde, which is one of them, which is 90 plus bamboo spear fighters, supported by whatever you can afford of HE in your backline. A few years ago, that was one of the best army builds, and that is maybe also a little bit with the meta changing. But a few years ago, Manuel, the German team captain, he won the first WTC. He was the best placed single individual player using that sort of list. But we're not seeing them anymore. They've sort of fallen out of favor, and so they're not in my top three right now. No.
Which is kind of interesting that, I mean, meta. So meta basically means kind of the theme going through
Yeah.
the scene at the moment, or what's working against what. But the thing that I'm kind of always, I don't know what the right word is, blown away by is that bolt action that hasn't changed in forever, yet the meta is changing. And
Yes.
that's just due to experience fighting these lists and knowing how to counter
Maybe.
them.
I'm not sure because for me, there's also this idea, I think, that people tend to copy things that have gone well for other people. I think a lot of I'm not accusing anyone in the comments. Don't hate me, please. Of net listing, which was a thing for like X-wing and 40K. Net listing
Right.
was a thing, right?
Hmm.
I think that's way more difficult in bold action, but we are seeing the meta for what's good change quite a lot. So just during the period I've been playing competitive bold action, it started out with like toolbox armies where you have like one of all everything, one of each small team. That was really good. And then horde armies became a thing, and everyone was playing sort of either Soviets with a lot of militia or Japanese with HE and bamboos or militia. And then that sort of changed again into what I'd like to call mono builds, like builds where you focus very much on one thing of one aspect of the game, like a lot of armored vehicles or a lot of skirmish units or a lot of assault units or a lot of flamers. Um, and then it changed again into noob bashers. We had a whole period where people were bringing, sorry, noob bashers. I have to explain that one. I call them noob bashers because they're like inexperienced players will typically lose to a multi-rocket launcher spam list where you have 2, 3, 4. I've seen 6 multi-rocket launchers in one list at one point, which is insane.
How do
Um,
you
and
even how does that work? I mean,
it
what list
doesn't.
is it?
You try to roll sixes. You're basically betting on trying to roll sixes,
But I mean, how do
and
you get 6 of them in one list?
well, if you allow more than one platoon, then the Soviets can do it with Katyushas. The Germans can do it with Howling Cows, Nebelwerfers. Um, so you can just max out the amount of multi-rocket launchers you can have in German platoons. You can even have 2 multi-rocket launchers in the same single platoon. You can have a Nebelwerfer and you can take a Panzerwerfer, the tank choice. So that's 2 multi-rocket launchers in a single platoon. You need 3 platoons then, but if you're buying very cheap infantry, because you're
I
gonna
got
have
it.
to sacrifice something else, right? If you're buying very cheap infantry, you can do that.
So that's
But
optimization.
that is
That's
optimization. That's it. Where you but that quickly turned away because lists where you betting on rolling sixes and you're betting on the opponent not trying to push up, because if they push too close to you with a multi-rocket launcher list, then you can't shoot them because you're going to hit your own men.
right.
Um,
Yeah. So yeah, so
and
that's
then
a counter right there then is just
that's a
get
counter right there. Just push. If you're ever faced, anyone in the comments, if you're ever faced with a lot of multi-rocket launchers, push forward, go up. But then it turned into barbecue. We had at the WTC in Cork, Dan Lane of the Juggernaut Bolt Action podcast. He won best individual there using a barbecue list, a list that had a lot of flamers in it. That was American engineers in Dodge trucks, and then a lot of people were bringing flamers and flamer lists, but that has also changed as well. The last WTC, not a lot of people were playing like 3+ flamethrower lists. So the meta shifts. Then we saw assault troops. Now I'm sort of seeing a shift back towards toolbox armies where people are bringing one of everything. The last major tournament that I hosted was called Sealand Open, which was sort of everyone could come, and many good players from the northern part of Europe did, and it was won by Danny from Holland, and he had brought an American list that was a toolbox list that had um, 2 of everything that he wanted in the list. So he actually had 2 multi-rocket launchers, the land mattresses. They're not called land mattress in American armies, 105 mil or something. Can't remember. Then he had 2 skirmish squads, 2 engineers, 2 Dodge trucks. So like 2 of everything, a toolbox basically, where he had a little bit of everything in his army list, and he had redundancy. That's the other thing. So
redundant.
um,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
So if one gets taken out, you got another one,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, and
So
that's why you see many competitive lists have 2 of everything that they can. I think there was someone in the comments talking about single platoons. If you have single platoons, that changes up the meta. Yes, it does. If you have single platoons, that changes up what you think is
oh
good,
yeah.
because you can't get a lot of redundancy then. You can't buy 2 stewards or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's
You're going to have
with
to go
single,
something else. Yeah.
especially if it's not a theater selector, if you're just doing generic
Mm,
reinforced platoons, single
mm,
platoon,
yeah.
there's very few. I mean, I think the Americans can bring machine guns.
Yeah.
Soviets, like we said, can bring AT. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's any other nations that can bring multiple of the same thing in
Well,
a
the
reinforced platoon.
Brits can, and
Mm,
the French can, with their armored car choices, because they can take early war motorcycles. They can take 3 of those. I
okay,
just bought and painted 3 motorcycles for myself, for my British Army, um, and they're really good skirmish units. They're very inexpensive. They have a single LMG, like a Bren gun, and it's only forward facing, but they're very mobile, so they're really good
right.
to
Plus, the
throw
British
up.
could bring 2 artillery observers.
You
You
could
get the free
potentially
one.
double up on that, yeah, as well.
Yeah,
Although I
that
don't,
that
I,
could be
I
pretty
don't think
nasty.
actually buying artillery observers is worth it. I've played a lot of
No,
Brits, so I've played a lot of Brits, and I always use the free observer. Yes, definitely for free, no brainer, right? And
yeah, I
use him,
hate
and
that
and
guy.
he can be really good. Yeah, of course you
I
hate him.
I
Yeah.
hate the free observer. I mean, we made a house rule because of it. It
Yeah.
was after the
Yeah,
first few times, the
eh,
free observer would run on and like at the end of the game, like claim an objective, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, it's bad
and
enough he's launching artillery for free, but now he's running around claiming objectives. So that's
oh
kind of
yeah, yeah,
our one of our few house rules for bolt action we have is when the free
yeah.
observer does his thing, his dice and himself are off the boards.
They're off the board. That I really like that. But I think actually, for me, the Brits don't need free units. I think they're good enough as is. I don't think they should have free units at all. I think like
No,
minor nations or some of the non-competitive nations, they should get free units. The Italians, they definitely need something to boost them, right?
yeah,
Um,
they're
but
probably
but
on the bottom of the list, right, for competitive, like
yeah, they're
literally the last.
maybe down there with the Norwegians and the Danes because those armies don't work either. So yeah, as soon as you have
Yeah,
negative special rules, I know a lot of people. Caspar, who commented earlier, he really likes his
negative.
Italians, but you have negative national special rules.
Yeah, that's not right.
I, that's not good.
No,
That doesn't work.
that's
Yeah.
thematic and historically accurate, probably,
Yes,
but
probably, but
um,
it doesn't really
yeah,
work
competitive wise,
for
no.
what? No, not for tournaments. Yeah, yeah,
So so for the question, what makes a unit or army competitive is pretty much options, national rules,
yeah,
options, and then
yeah.
it comes down to if you're bringing a single platoon, bringing multiple platoons, that changes everything.
It does. It really
But
does. Yeah,
some nations single reinforced platoon has more options than other nations, so those would
yeah,
probably be higher
yeah,
on the list, just
yeah. I mean,
right out
if
of
you
the
go
gate.
single platoon, then I would still argue that there are certain nations that are better than others. Uh, and I have run single English platoons, bridge platoons, very successfully as well, and won tournaments using single platoons with Brits. So I still think the Brits are up there. I also think the Soviets are up there for competitive play. The Germans
Mm,
really depends on a lot of other things. The Japanese can actually also do well in single platoon metas. There was one of the guys in the comments who said that the Europe is mostly multi platoon meta. Not actually true. It really depends on the individual event. We have a lot of events that run single platoons as well, and we have events now that are running theaters only as well.
yeah,
Um,
that would be interesting. I've seen that. One
that
of
is
them, I forgot
interesting.
what it was called, but it was
In
you can only
Scotland, Alistair Unicom is running, and this is the third time he's run. It's called Megatron 3000,
that's it.
which is an event where you pick a theater platoon. As soon as you pick it, you lock it in. Nobody else can
Right.
pick that, which is really a cool idea because then you're not getting all Silo Heights platoons, right? You get one
Yeah,
Silo
I
Heights,
love it.
but the rest will have to pick someone else, something else. And people want if they've participated in one of his events, they can't actually bring the same list again, so they have to pick another theater platoon. So he's also encouraging people to expand their collections and build something new and think something new and paint something new, which is really cool. Yeah,
Yeah, I guess if you don't get in early, you're going to be using one of the lesser um, lesser theater lists.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, I like the
and
idea of that. It's pretty neat.
yeah, yeah, it is. And actually, there are certain metas. I took a trip a few years ago to Italy and had a game there, and found out that the Italian meta is that they play theaters because they think they're fairer. Whereas in Northern Europe, in Scandinavia, we tend to play generic single platoons or generic double platoons because we think that is fairer. But the Italians were like, nope, nope, no, no. Why would you do that? That's completely unfair. Theaters, that's the way to go. Okay, I had no idea. So there's a lot of difference, and there's talking about meta again. There's a lot of difference in what you think is good in individual metas. That changes quite a lot. Depending on where you're from and who you play. Yeah.
Yeah. So oh crap, hold on. Sorry about that. I have my list of questions here. So we talked about optimization a little bit already.
Yeah. But we can do a little bit more. I have more to say
Yeah.
on that
So
always.
what would you consider optimization, and how do you do it? How do you make a list
um,
optimized?
yeah. One thing is you play a lot of games and you make a lot of lists, and you, after each game, you sort of ask yourself, did this work out? And you ask your opponent as well, did this work out? Was there anything you think I should do differently? um, that's the basis of any optimization that you're doing with your lists, or the way you play it, or how you deploy it, or the individual decisions during the game. Ask your opponent and listen to them honestly. um, Especially when you lose, I think that's the place where you learn the most. um, I also have to say that I do list optimization on a regular basis now. One of the things that I do on my channel is that people send me their lists, and I sort of make a review of their lists, and all of that is always from my own personal optimization, competitive play viewpoint, right? So I'm not trying to make them more historical. I'm not trying to give them advice on what's fun to play or anything. I'm just, if you do this, then you become a little bit better. And I'm not saying, I'm never saying that the list is what makes a player good, but it does help to have a tool that is a little bit stronger, right? And that all started because I was running a tournament and I wanted to make some commercials for it. I wanted people to engage with the tournament, so I started like, send me your lists, I'll talk about it on YouTube, and I did so, and people were responding to that, and other people started responding as well. So that was actually how my channel got started. That was because I was making commercials for my own advertisements for my own tournaments. Yeah. So, but I also think that when you start an army, I talked about this earlier, that you should figure out what it is that you want that army to do. How do you want it to play? What's your game plan? How do you? So a lot of the armies that I play not exclusively, but I play a lot of assault armies, and that means that I'm looking at a list and saying, okay, I want to assault. My infantry wants to assault. I need units to do that. I need support so that I can assault. So everything in my list building sort of revolves around how to do that well, and how to help that. Um, so do your choices, your selections, do they actually help what it is your intention is for your gameplay?
How
If you're
would
going to,
you
yeah.
how many, like, for you personally, how many times would you want to play a list before you were to take it to a tournament? Is there a
Um,
is it just to feel comfortable? Is there a do you have to have so many losses to kind of find the weaknesses of it?
I play tournaments to win them. I play, and that means for me as many as possible. There was this one scientist who at one point examined people who play the violin in Sweden, I think, and he figured out that the top 10 violinists in Europe, they were all playing the violin for at least 10,000 hours. So I'm not saying you play your list for 10,000 hours, but I'm saying
That's
the more
a lot
you
of games.
practice with something, the better you become. Um, that is definitely true. So I will play as many games as I possibly can with a list. Right now, I am in dire need of games because I'm going to the Dutch nationals in a month, and I haven't played a lot of games. So, um,
Hence
uh,
the tabletop simulator, right?
hence the tabletop simulator, yes, because and it, of course, it helps if you have guys to train with. My regular club, we have a small, very competitive club, and they are basically the guys who build me up. If I'm good at this game, it's because of them. It's not because of me. Um, so that helps if you have other players to do it with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially like-minded competitive players that can
Yes.
pick
Yes.
apart your list, find weaknesses in it, and
And who are
test
perfectly
them.
willing to tell you every time you make a mistake,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, that's not
great.
a problem normally.
Um, I often play with a very good friend of mine called Michael, and Michael, he has this tendency. So I would make a move, and he would like allow me to finish my move, like roll all the dice, and then he was like, "That's a huge mistake you just made because now I'm doing like this. Why wouldn't you tell me beforehand?" Because he always allows me to make the mistake first.
Yeah. Well, that's how you learn, right? It's like
That's yeah,
losing games, you
yeah,
learn a lot probably more,
yeah,
and making mistakes is gonna teach you a lot better than someone telling you before you
yeah,
make the mistake. I mean, that's just true in
exactly.
life in general, and
Yeah.
bolt action.
But if we're going back to list optimization, I also think that you have to try and honestly evaluate your lists. You have to honestly look at your units and say, can I get this capability on the tabletop, and can I get it cheaper? Because the points are a thing. The number of dice you
Right.
have in the bag are a thing. If you're
Mm.
not optimizing the amount of dice you have in the bag, yes, I know that also means you're weaker in kill points, right? But there's a like there's a Goldilocks zone at around for me, and that changes with meta. I know the Goldilocks zone in America is a little lower than it is in Europe. For me, at 1,000 points, I would want to get ideally 14 to 15 order dice. Although I have taken lower than that and done well. Um, and
That's a
and you
lot of
see,
dice for that points.
yeah, I know, but that's because you're from the States.
Yeah.
Um, you're used to lower Goldilocks zones, but you still have a Goldilocks zone. You still have where your meta sort of feels like this is maybe where I want to be. Um, whether that's 12 or 13 or 10, or it doesn't matter, as long as the whole meta sort of is in that Goldilocks zone. That's where you all sort of feel like that's a good place to be. For me, it's up 14 to 15, but um, then I count one free British artillery observer, right? So
Right.
that's one more. Um, but you do see some people playing again the horde lists where they go above 20 in their order dice, and that's just insane. They're trying to dominate one part of the game, the dice bag, and make sure that they get the order dice first, right? So yeah.
Yeah, that's sorry if you hear loud breathe. My dog just came in here.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
panting. That's not me. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's dice number of dice. Like for us, my idea of Goldilocks zone for my channel is a little different because
Mm.
we're trying to film a game, and
Yeah.
if you get starting above 12, 13 dice, and then suddenly your game's taking 5 hours. So
Longer.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
but competitive wise, that's not an issue.
No.
Yeah, having a lot of dice, it's a huge thing in the game. We played games with maybe 9 against 12 even, and that's
Mm.
you feel like you're never going. There's always
Yeah.
the other guy's dice coming
It's
out,
always the other guy,
and that can
and
get really
and
demoralizing,
it
especially as
can.
you start taking losses, and that compounds it, and then
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you just feel swamped. So I can see the
And also
dice
also because of the
number.
the 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 pin mechanic, right? That if I have two units and they might be half the price of your one unit, which is very good, but my two units can give you two pins.
Right.
Having more units is a benefit in bold action, not to like the extreme, because you can buy very cheap Strafbad 5-man units to your heart's content, and they will immediately die as soon as someone looks at them, right? So yeah.
And that's where the optimization comes in, is balancing number of units, number
Mm,
of dice versus quality
yep,
of unit, and
exactly. Yeah,
that's all the stuff that you need to practice and get a lot of games in on.
yeah.
Yeah, so
And I also
that's
think you have to sort of look at your list, and also as many lists made by other people as you can, and try to see what is their weakness. Because honestly, all lists have weaknesses. I've never seen a list yet that I thought like this has no place, no soft spot. They all do have something where, because this is a points game, you're always sacrificing something for something else, right?
right.
That
Yeah,
just
that's the
happens.
optimization.
So whether or not it's lacking AT, or it's weak on infantry, or whether it hasn't got real push units like veterans that can stand up, or large units of regulars that can stand up to a lot of punishment, or it hasn't got skirmish capabilities, or it hasn't got HE, something. It all lists will lack something, and if you can exploit that, then you're doing competitive gaming. Then you're doing like, I know how I can beat this list, and you're also evaluating your own lists, and sort of figuring out what is it that I'm lacking. Okay, how can I do without this?
Well, that's one thing. It's kind of surprising the Germans aren't better with the Panzerfaust. I mean, that's
Mm,
like the answer to all your AT needs. 5
it is.
points. I mean,
Yes.
that's probably the best unit, or the best thing the Germans have as far as
Yeah.
competitive going, is
Yes.
5 point AT. You don't have to worry about AT anymore. Everyone's
Yep.
got it.
Yep.
Everyone's got that bubble around them.
Yep.
Um,
The one thing I'll say to that is the Soviets have it as well.
yeah, that's true.
So
So they're
and the Soviet selection for everything else is just way better. But it is one of the competitive advantages that the Germans get, and I think you should make use of that. But then you might be up against a Japanese list that has 0 vehicles. So what are you going to
right.
use your fast for? You're being charged by militia. Yeah,
I mean, you can fire them at guys, right? I mean, it's
but it's a little bit
it's not
overkill if you
ideal.
do.
You're
It's a
trying to
little
kill
bit
a
overkill.
veteran, within
Yeah,
12 inches,
yeah,
whatever. But
yeah,
so, moving on, what do you? So, can you give just some quick examples of competitive units? Like, what's kind of the
yeah.
meta at the
Um,
moment? What's been the meta? Is what's
Remember,
maybe
this is
stands the
ever
test of
changing,
time,
right? It's
right?
always changing, but there are some units that have stood the test of time a little bit. This changes every time a new book comes out as well. Um, we're always competitive players are always looking through the books. That's what the juggernauts do. That's what I do. Look through the books, see what units can you use in generic reinforced platoons, what theater selectors maybe pushes that. But there are some units that have stood the test of time. I've talked about the dog mines, the Soviet dog mines. Clearly the cheapest, best AT option in the game, and on you're always hitting on a 4+. You don't get any other weapon that's that good. um, and it's not even like the tank can defend itself by shooting at the dog. I know, like, don't shoot dogs, right? But in real life, they could open fire with their machine guns, couldn't they? Trying to stop that dog if they knew that the Soviets were placing mines on their dogs, they
Oh
could
yeah,
try and. But
yeah,
but that dog, and it has a lot of range, and it's just very good. And typically, what you'll see is people buy them inexperienced. They buy 3 small teams, inexperienced dudes, 2 dogs each. So that's 2 shots at 4+, pretty likely to hit some of them, right?
yeah. Oh, it's
Um,
insane. Yeah, because you're not range, cover,
yeah,
nothing matters. Just straightforward. What's the
and
range
you'll
on them again?
it's 18 inches, and
Okay,
because you're
that's
moving first, you move the 6 inches, then you're firing 18
mm,
inches, so that's 24 inches, and you'll see a lot of people actually putting them in jeeps. So you have the jeep, you that's 12 inches of movement, that's 6 inches out of that, which is 18 inches, which on top of another 18 inches, that's
wow.
36 inches. So you can hit anything. There's nothing that's safe if you get the dice.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's the
just if
trick,
but if
right?
you have a 20 dice or something in the
Yeah,
bag, there's a good chance that
yeah,
you'll be able to pull something like that off.
yeah. Especially if in the end of the turn and the other player already has all his dice. Okay. Have you
Yeah.
moved that tank yet? No. Right. I
Oh,
don't care if
man,
it's on ambush. I'm just pushing up my dog mines.
that's dirty.
So yeah. So that's one thing. Um, but if we're just looking at the Soviets right now, the BA-20 with a flamethrower is also very, very cheap for what it actually brings, because it can kill anything. It doesn't matter that your opponent brought the Panther or the KV-2 or whatever. It doesn't matter that he has 10 plus, because he is going to fail that morale test. It will happen sometime. So the BA-20, and it has a range on the flamethrower, is really, really good, really, really good, and it's so maneuverable, and it can make the escape move as well. Very much worth it for the points. And the final thing I would draw out, again, for the Soviets and Americans, and a little bit for the Brits, is the Darker Steward. My term, sorry about that. I borrowed it from 40K. Um,
Yeah, I think everyone's familiar with that term. Gamers
yeah, I
are
think it sort of traveled well. The upgunned Steward, the Steward with the LMGs, and for Soviets and Americans with Recce on the Stewards as well. It's just very, very good for the price you're paying for it, right? It's undercosted for the capabilities that it brings to the table. Yes, I know it's fairly vulnerable to anti-tank weapons, but look at anything infantry wise, and if they're not going down or in hard cover, they are going to suffer a lot of casualties if a steward starts shooting at them. um, so the Soviets, you can already see 3 of my top metas units are in that, and these have been there for quite a long time in the top that you're seeing for most all competitive Soviet armies. um, If we're looking at other units, then the of course the Gurkhas for British. They're everyone's favorite hate meme by now.
Right.
Maori Gurkha Peras, right? The Merkas, as they're termed, which I have never seen, by the way. I've never seen anyone attempt to bring Maori Gurkha Peras or Maori Gurkhas to anything. It doesn't happen. Even the most competitive events where people are like, oh, I don't care about the rules. We could play it with bottle caps. I don't care. Um, um, you, People are not bringing that because they know it's silly.
So
But
even
they are bringing.
competitive players have their limits, huh?
Yes, I think so. And I also think because we're not jerks. We're competitive players, but we're not jerks, and we know that that's a jerk move. Everyone
Okay.
knows that that's just don't do that. Why? I know you can by the rules, but that's just sloppy writing, isn't it? But the Gurkhas have stood up to the test of time. They
Yeah.
are because
They've been amazing forever.
they are amazing, and they are amazing because they're pretty likely to win close combats, right? Which other units are not. Um, yes, some Japanese fanatics or the SAS. I have a whole video coming out about the top 10 assault units pretty soon as well, and they are of course up there, right? So the Gurkhas up for the Brits is a thing. And we can debate on size of units and composition, and do you want SMGs or do you want them in transport, all of that. But the unit itself is just very, very solid. Veterans, they've got tough fighter and they've got special rules, and you can even get national special rules to synergize with those.
Oh yeah, up and at 'em, right?
Up and
That's
Adam, or
turns them into
even
bonsai pretty much.
yeah, or even tough as all boots, which gives them extra attacks, or the battle cry one, can't remember what that's called, where the enemy can't do
Oh,
defensive
blood
fire.
curdling charge or
Also
whatever.
blood curdling charge, yeah, also really beneficial. So all the all the special rules for the Brits basically all benefit Gurkhas. Um, yeah, which of course means you're not seeing many British regulars in British competitive lists. I'll just say that.
So I so one of the things I think that or historical gamers, going back to our very first question,
Yeah.
that historical gamers probably don't like
Mm,
about the competitive scene is that like all the worst tanks in the real war are like the best tanks
yeah.
in the game.
Yeah.
Like
And I
it's the
I
tanks that
completely
have
agree.
phased out
Yeah.
quickly. Suddenly they're
Yeah.
like
Everyone
very
pulled
good.
off the LMGs on those Stuarts because yes, the Stuart tank itself was it ran perfectly well. It was a good recce vehicle, but they didn't want the machine guns on it. They just took up space. They weren't effective in any way. And in the game, they're just overly effective. And I
Yeah,
agree that there is something there with back to what I said earlier with the point setting of the game. There's something that's not right. Because what was good in real life, the tanks that were good in real life, the tanks that were everywhere in real life, are just not seen in the game.
right.
Um, looking forward to version 3 where maybe that changes up a bit. That would be cool. I completely
Yeah, that'd
agree.
be a whole nother show. Is I would like
It
to
would.
do a show about version 3. Like what would we like to see? What do we think we might see? That could be a fun one, I think. Is I
That
think
could be a
about that
fun
all
one.
the time, and
Yeah.
I mean my ideas are like way out there. I'm thinking I want to switch to D10s. I want to do, but that's like
The rumors I'm hearing is that we're not going to see D10s, but
yeah,
it was
I
talked
didn't
about,
think
I
that would.
think.
It'd
Yeah,
be fun though, because like
it
the
would be
Warlords
fun.
of Erewhon mechanic, I would
Yeah.
like everyone to have stats.
Mm,
Shooting stat, fighting stat, very
yeah.
simple stats, but stats nonetheless. And
Yeah.
but anyway,
A little bit
that's for a
more
whole nother show.
differentiation between the different armies. For
Yeah,
me,
totally.
I think the coolest thing and that could be cool both for historical, for casual, and for competitive play, would be that each nation got to choose between a few national special rules, like the Brits do. I
Yeah.
really
Oh,
want to see that, especially for the Germans, because I think their national special rules are just not up to
yeah,
it.
that could be pretty cool. Having a kind of a
Yeah,
just like a list of generic universal rules that you can build
exactly.
your army
Yeah,
around. Yeah,
yeah,
that would be super awesome. So,
yeah, yeah,
um, yeah, so I think that's pretty much it for our competitive talk. But
yep.
yeah, I mean, maybe someday I can get you back on and we can think up some ideas for version 3. Maybe get another guest or two and come up with a
Definitely.
definitive list of stuff that we want to see for version 3.
And
That
then
could be a
send
lot
it
of
all
fun.
to Warlord Games for for their perusal at any point of
Yeah,
leisure. Yeah.
then they can just immediately ignore it, right?
Yep. Of course they can.
So, yeah. So thanks to Bo for coming on. I don't know if I'm going to show up. I got some stuff I'm going to show from some of our viewers who sent in some minis that I like to just show off during the streams. So if you want to hang around for that
I
real
will.
quick.
Yeah.
So let's just dive right into that here. So these are all stuff that
Oh,
I got from my
oh,
Facebook group.
that
And
looks
this is
very
kind of
cool.
some miscellaneous stuff here.
Yeah.
So Andrew Blank, this is a Fallschirmjäger
Yeah.
Recon with
Mm.
one of the little half tracks, which that's
And
another thing.
those Hanomag half tracks, I really want them to be better. I really want them to be more like they
Yes.
were historically, like uh, uh, like assault taxis, basically, right? They
Yeah.
were the vehicles that brought the guys up to the front, not the trucks that we're seeing all the time in games of bolt action. So I really want the Hanomags to be better. But
And I
yeah,
think a very simple fix to make them useful would be just you can't take pins when you're in it.
yeah,
If they
yeah.
did that, I think you'd see those all over the place probably.
Maybe. I also think that you could do something with not making them transport so they don't die at the end of a turn if the enemy is closer.
Yeah.
That
Oh
could
yeah,
also be a thing. Yeah.
that's another house rule we have. Any kind
Yeah.
of armored transport doesn't suffer that rule because I mean, they're there to fight.
Yeah. They're
They're
there
not
to
dropping
fight.
guys
Yeah.
off and driving back. They're there to
Yeah.
stay and fight.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so next up we have, let's see here, Ben
Oh,
Gregg.
lovely white color on that.
Yeah, so he sent these in. These are his winter Germans, which winter armies are always my favorite.
Yeah.
These look really nice.
Really cool.
The only suggestion I would say, Ben, and this is what I do with mine, is I would do a very light dry brush of
Mm.
white,
Yeah.
just to give a little
Maybe
frost
maybe
effect
maybe
on them.
just on the coats or something
Yep.
because the helmets look really good.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're outside. They've been living outside.
Yeah.
They'd probably be pretty frosty looking, but
Yeah. Or at
I mean
least
that's just my personal
dusty
preference.
and dirty. Yeah.
Yeah, but these guys look amazing. I mean,
Mm. Yeah.
I
Really,
understand not
really.
wanting to cover up a nice paint job like this by dry brushing white over it. It's kind of a
Yeah.
scary thing to do.
It is. It is.
But as long as you don't get too crazy with it, it gives a nice effect. So next up we have so Roger
Oh.
sent this. This is more just a kind of a action shot.
Mm.
It's like he's got some
But look,
Americans.
he's got one thing I really like. He's got colored, coded stuff on his Marines there. On the basis, which makes
Yep.
it way easier to locate who's the NCO, who's got the BAR, or the Bren gun. I mean, all of that, it just with the color coding. I know people who do that with just little tufts and different colors, or like flower tufts. So they will put a red one on the NCOs or whatever. Really good idea because it's easier to pick out.
Yeah, and it speeds the game up too because you're
It
not
does. Yeah.
picking each model up saying, "Is this the
Yeah.
NCO?" No,
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
who he is. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and just for people watching, it helps keep who's who straight in their brain.
Yeah, really does.
So let's see here. Next up, we have
Oh,
Tanker M18. He sent us these, so I love me some transports.
yeah.
When I first started bolt action, that's kind of one of the first things I started buying was trucks. I bought a lot of
Yep.
trucks. I just like
Yeah.
the idea of trucks. And this is back in version 1 when trucks weren't as good.
Mm.
But now that they can fire with machine guns
Yeah,
with
they're
nobody
pretty
in
good
them,
now.
they're
Yeah.
really good. I mean, I
Yeah.
actually stopped taking them as much as I used to, but
Mm.
yeah, they're super good, and these are really
And
nice.
for me, the one that he has here, the Dodge truck with an MMG on top of it, that's
Oh,
just
the beep.
that's one of my favorite
Yeah.
skirmish units. It's really good.
Yep, the beep with the machine gun. You put some engineers in there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it looks like an armored Jeep as well.
It does, yeah. An armored jeep with an MMG. I didn't know they could do that, but I know that they have one theater selected where you can take a double bazooka in an armored jeep, which is really insane. That's a good AT gun. Two
Yeah.
shots with a bazooka.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've started kit bashing one of those at one point and I never
yeah,
finished it, but it does seem like a nice unit.
it
Two
is.
bazookas on an armored Jeep.
Yeah, yeah. I've had
And
lots of stewards killed by that.
blue on blue.
Yeah.
So Mark Kramer, so he sent us a couple. The first one here, he's doing some SS stuff.
Mm.
These guys came out really good.
Really good camo.
MG42,
Yeah.
MG42 team. And then he's done some Marines.
Yeah.
So Marines, going back to the competitive thing, they're probably like the top of the American
They are.
competitive list,
Yeah.
right?
Along with the engineers, the regular engineers, they
Regular
would be,
engineer.
yeah, regular engineers and Marines. That would be in most American lists you'll see in competitive games. Yeah.
Yeah, you bring BARs. I think you can bring three
Yeah.
BARs in a Marine
Yeah.
squad, and
Yeah.
pistol. You can give them
Really,
pistols,
really
make them
good
tough fighters,
skirmishers. Yeah.
and you can make
Uh,
them stubborn, right? If you the
Yeah,
Raiders, I
if you want
believe,
to,
but
yeah, if you have the
you can
points
make
and if you want to, but they're really good skirmishes. They're really good, like in your own table half and just delivering out pens and shots. Can't go wrong with that. Move and fire.
yeah,
It's brilliant.
yep, yeah. They're really good. So moving on here, what we got next here. So
Woodland
moving on to some
Indians.
other stuff here. So these are, I believe you said Mohawk War Party or Huron War Party. Sean Swartz. So he's working on some American War of Independence slash French and Indian War type stuff, which I love these Native American warriors. We just had a
Yeah,
big game with
really
sharp
colorful
practice
as
with these
well.
guys, and
Yeah.
they're a lot of fun to paint. Totally different, when you're
Mm,
World War II guy forever, and then you start doing
yeah.
stuff like that. It's a
Yeah.
nice break.
Mm.
Then moving on, let's see here. So
Oh,
James sent this. I believe it's
that
a
is a desert vehicle.
Valentine. Is that what that is?
I think
Or
so. I'm not sure. I'm not
yeah, I think it
brilliant
is.
at recognizing tanks. But
Yeah, especially
if they're
the
not the stewards, then I can.
yeah. Some of them are very recognizable. Some of them,
Some of
like
them are, yeah,
a lot of the early British stuff. You
yeah.
got Mark 9, Mark 6, Mark
Mm,
1, or those are hard for me. American
yeah,
stuff I can identify. British stuff is a little bit
mm,
tricky for me, but I think it's a Valentine. If I'm wrong, we might get a comment here.
yeah.
If anyone knows what this is. Um, okay, so let's go back to here, move on.
Mm.
Next up, we got Joseph. And I love this picture.
Oh man,
You
that
got the big
is
guy.
Flames of War stuff, isn't it?
That is, yeah, that's probably like 15 mil, I think, or 10
Yeah.
mil. And then a 28 mil guy in the background. But so I think he's building for O Group, which is a company battalion level game where you use
Mm.
small miniatures like this.
Yeah.
But they're really neat. If you want to
Really
play
cool.
big games with small
That
models, that's
is
the way to
really
do it.
difficult, isn't it, to paint in that scale?
Yeah, it can be. Depends on if you're trying to put a lot of detail. Yeah, it can be
Yeah.
tough,
Yeah.
or it can be not tough if you just going for the very bare minimum. But he put a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
effort
yeah,
into those. They
yeah.
look great. So next up, we got a Black Hawk. This Phil's. He's doing some modern stuff.
Mm.
So super awesome. I love
Yeah.
Black Hawks. Should say I love looking at them. I don't love writing in them.
And another
Uh,
modern.
yeah, and so this is a modern British sniper team.
Yep.
Continue with our modern theme. Have you ever tried modern bolt action, Bo?
I have not. And I have been thinking about it, but I don't have the miniatures for it. And
Yeah,
if we get to a point where bold action sort of uh, pulls in that direction, and if it's good for competitive games, I think I will go there. But just for hobby fun and stuff, not so much. I am by trade, I'm a historian. I teach history at a college, and I like medieval history and Napoleonics and stuff. So that's also where I most enjoy painting, like the bright colors and stuff like that. That's what I really enjoy. So um, for competitive purposes or for a one-off, I'll try anything at least once.
it's pretty
But
fun. Yeah, I played it
yeah,
before. It's like I think it's a fan made mod, and but everything's a lot more lethal. There's a lot more
yeah,
attachments. Everything's
yeah,
better. So I think competitive wise, it probably wouldn't be as good. I think World War II is kind of that sweet spot where
yeah.
everything is pretty badass, pretty deadly,
Mm,
but not over
mm,
the top. crazy deadly. It's in a good spot, I think.
Yep.
So moving on here. So Peter, he's got a Maltier, which is
Nice
super
weathering
nice.
on this one. Yeah.
Nice weathering, nice paint job. Maltier, I was talking. There was a post about it, I believe, in one of the bolt action groups recently. Someone was asking Maltier or Opel Blitz for his winter German army. I vote Maltier. I think, I don't know,
Competitively, neither of them are, but that depends again on army builds. I've seen both used. I think the Opel Blitz is a little more used, but it really depends on what you want to do with your build, doesn't it?
I do like the ability to go into rough terrain with a truck.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that
think
is
it's
pretty nifty.
underrated for
Yeah.
what it can. It's not something when you're just looking at, on paper, it's like, okay,
Mm,
it can go in the woods.
yeah.
Don't think much of it, but the second you have to drive through some woods, or the second that you would have to drive around the woods and get shot instead of just
Mm,
driving through them and staying out of sight, you're like, okay,
yeah,
I can see the value of a Maltier now.
yeah.
Plus, they look super awesome. They're very
Ooh,
iconic looking.
ooh,
Then last up here, we got a BF 109, again by Peter. And this is a
mm,
really nice. I
yeah.
love the gray and the color. What is that?
Bright yellow
Modulation.
here as well. Yeah, yeah.
Really nice stuff. I'm guessing this is for. I think he said this is for airstrike
Yeah, yeah.
markers for
I
the
know
for bolt action.
a lot of people does this because it just looks so awesome on the table.
Yeah, and it's
Not
just an
necessary at
excuse
all, but
to.
it really looks. It's an excuse to paint up an
Yeah,
airplane model, isn't it?
and that's half of it. Really is what's
Yeah,
fun to paint.
yeah.
Do I need that? No, but I like it, so I'm going to do it.
I
So he
really
did a
like
great
it, so I'm
job on
painting
this.
it. Yeah.
Can't tell, is that? It looks like it has a gun pod underneath the wing, or am I?
It does. Yeah. Not sure what that is,
I
but
know these BF 109s had tons of variations.
mm,
Some of them had big cannons on them, some just machine guns. So
yeah.
yeah, that was thanks to all the viewers and members of the Tabletop CP Facebook group for sending those. We always like showing off your guys' work because you do amazing work. You take pride in it. You're passionate about it, and then that's one thing we really love. So anyway, yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, thanks to Bo for coming out and talking to us about competitive bolt action. It's something I want to try, so I'm going to probably send you a list.
Do that.
Or
I
maybe
will.
I'll try to work with you.
Yep.
Like I said, I don't have a lot of repeated. I don't have 3 Stewarts. I got 1, but I think with what I have, we could make a competitive list.
We'll try
So
anyway.
we'll make something competitive. But I mean, there's some parameters I have to stay within. Like I can't really have 20 dice per rag. It's just time
Nope.
wise.
Yep.
It'd take too long. Although we
Yep.
could probably do
But
something like a
that's the same
multi-day thing.
for every single event. Every time someone sends me a list, I would highly encourage people to do that when they're sending me lists. That like give me the parameters of what you're building for, because there are events that has dice caps where I can only bring 12 dice. Okay, then that's what we're aiming for, and we can work within those limitations. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and then most of these tournaments they all have time limits too, so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's part of it. That's
That
another
is
thing that needs to be
definitely a
factored in.
part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right.
I put a link to Bo's YouTube channel in the description of this video. So go check that out if you're in a competitive, you want to get more into it and learn. Bo's a great resource for that. He knows a lot about it. He's been to a ton of events. He's highly regarded in the bolt action competitive community. So a great place to go learn. And he's got like over 600 videos, I noticed, which is a lot.
Yep.
So he's putting out a lot of content, a lot of list critiques
Yep.
and unit
Yep.
reviews, stuff like that. So really top shelf stuff. So yeah, and so with that, we're going to end the live stream. Thanks to everyone who came out. Sorry if I didn't get to your comment, but
Thanks for
next time.
having me and inviting me
Yeah,
to do this. That was really good. I'm sorry to all the guys in the comments who didn't get anything answered. We were busy talking about what we had planned, not what you were asking in the comments.
yeah, yeah. Maybe another time we'll do a more of a Q&A type
Right.
thing, but this was more just based on competitive bolt action. I think we did a good job on that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let us know what you think in the comments, and we'll see y'all next time.